We have a crowded agenda. We have, as you know, Sarah Jarik joining us and want to get as much of her time as we can. So we're going to do a quick, very rapid federal funding for housing counseling. We'll also just talk about an upcoming work we're doing on student loans and housing counseling. Spend most of our call with Sarah. Do want to do a quick shout out. I'm in Kansas City today. We're doing a multi-state framework here. Matthew's in Philly. Sarah, I think, is in DC, and but I'm here for meetings and want to give a quick thanks to the people at NHS of Greater Kansas City who've been incredibly nice and are hosting my presence here. And we're going to do a meeting with housing counselors in the Kansas City area, and then be part of the NCLR network meetings tomorrow. But let's get moving really quick. So Matthew, what's the latest on the federal funding, especially NFMC?
Yep, so we'll just quickly go through this. Folks have probably heard by now, but the Senate Appropriations Committee moved their THUD bill. They included the same level of funding for HUD housing counseling, which is $47 million, same amount that the House included, and that is the current level. But the big news was that they didn't include any funding for NFMC at all. People remember the House passed the House bill included $42 million for NFMC. The good news, I guess, is that the bill that the Senate moved, Democrats have vowed that they won't let that come up for a vote. So there's really two possible outcomes for restoring funding for NFMC. One would be a continuing resolution, which has been, that's been the norm of late for funding in Washington. If they can't reach any kind of an agreement, then a continuing resolution that would keep funding at the current levels of $47 million and $50 million would be the outcome. The alternative is that if the Republicans and Democrats can negotiate some sort of an agreement that would be a compromise and they would agree to raise the overall spending levels. And that outcome, there would be a higher number for the two sides to work with, and they could go back in and start adding funding for some of the programs that were cut. That would give us a chance to restore, at least partially restore funding for the NFMC program. So that's what we're kind of working towards now. It's really months down the road that if that happens, that will play out. But we're now just kind of laying the groundwork for it. I think that's all I'm going to say for now.
Yeah, and I think some of you will get calls from Matthew and emails about strategic moves that we would really like your help on. We really appreciate the work that a lot of people have already done, and we're coordinating with a coalition of fund intermediaries. We're working with a variety of other networks as well. So there's a lot of support for this, but I think we are going to have to really make this a priority in our time and in people's crowded schedules to make sure we don't end up with a very bad outcome. So we'll be in touch on that one at some length. Next up, really quick, just for your calendars, the next leaders call will go back to the regular time, but we're going to have Natalia Abrams from Student Debt Crisis. She's one of the leading experts on student loans and how to resolve their situations. We thought we'd do an overview with her this summer on that call around what counselors should know about student loans and when they need to figure out when to refer them to specialists and when they should be sent to lawyers. The idea is that this should be a fairly practical presentation as overview, and then this fall we're going to do much more in-depth webinars which you could bring your staff to join us on, and we'll have a pretty high capacity to take lots of callers, and we'll be geared towards really trying to give people in-depth information that they can use in each of the different categories of student loans. So it's been a top priority for lots of people, and that's why we're making it an emphasis right now. Okay, so as always, we're very happy to have Sarah Jarik join us. She's the head of the Office of Housing Counseling and has been a tremendous force in our business and helping expand our work and create more opportunities and really think about product and also I think brings with her a deep knowledge of our business, and also now that she's in government has been out in the field and being able to talk with many of us and has a kind of the bigger view of our work as well. We really appreciate that a lot. Sarah suggested that maybe we start out with kind of updates from the Office of Housing Counseling. So Sarah, welcome.
Thanks so much. Thank you, Bruce and Matthew, and all of you. You know, the National Housing Resource Center we really value your partnership, your advocacy, and I really welcome this opportunity. I'm going to try not to go over things you might have heard from me a million times, but in talking to Bruce and Matthew, we really wanted to focus on maybe some interesting trends, things we're seeing, tips that we wanted to advise, but mostly we want to hear from you. I cannot tell you how difficult it is to get feedback. If you're a normal person and you want to know what people think, you ask them, what do you think of what I'm considering doing? If you're in the federal government and you say, what do you think, you trigger the Paperwork Reduction Act and the Administrative Procedures Act, which basically prevent you from asking that simple question. And so at the same time, if we don't do it formally, but if you use our email box, housing.counseling@hud.gov, you can let us know what you think, and you can always pick up the phone or shoot an email to me or any one of my staff. And your feedback has been really invaluable if we're doing the right thing or wrong thing. So all through, I'm going to share some stuff with you, and we want your feedback. I wanted to start just with a reminder about how my office is organized. You know, we do have 3 offices. I'm the Deputy Assistant Secretary. My number 2, who some of you may have met, is Dan Carmen. He works with me here in DC, and we provide guidance and vision to the office, and we support progress under the strategic plan. We measure results and make sure the policies we create on the national level are working well at your level. And to that end, I've really loved going out and seeing your offices. I think I've been to 27 or 28 states, and really would like to go see the rest of them. So don't hesitate to invite me or any one of my staff, actually, if you think that we would benefit from seeing your work on the ground. We also have an Office of Oversight and Accountability under Cheryl Appline in Atlanta. Her office ensures that we're all working to deliver quality housing services and good stewardship of federal funds. And that usually means our performance review process and managing external audits that we get. Our Office of Outreach and Capacity Building under Jerry Mayer is responsible for increasing the visibility of housing counseling and providing technical assistance and training to you all and to us. And they have a very active training program so that we all know how to do things. In fact, we just got our own grant execution training earlier today. And finally, the Office of Policy and Grant Administration under Brian Siebenlist drafts our NOFAs, revises and streamlines our rules and regulations, looks at our handbook, and looks at ideas for legislative change. They support research efforts to document the outcomes of housing counseling. So that's really brief, but I wanted to give you a sense of the people and leadership at my office and some of the responsibilities they have. Today we have 68 staff located in 25 offices throughout the country. We cover 4 time zones from Anchorage to Miami, and all of us, but one, I think, carry a portfolio of HUD-approved agencies that we both monitor and support. Since we're a virtual office, our portfolios are not necessarily assigned by geography, which has some pluses and minuses. We do hire, and if you know of somebody who's interested in working with us, and I don't want to poach anyone, but you know, please keep an eye on usajobs.org hud.gov, which is the official hiring website for the federal government. So let me turn to goals that we hold ourselves to and how they relate to HUD's strategic plan. And I say that because you know, I'm a huge believer in understanding what your end goal is, why you're there, why we have a program. And I can't tell you the number of programs I've been involved with over my life that haven't been really clear about their purpose or goal. Although they've been great ideas, they've missed that focus. I think we're really focused here, and we contribute to HUD's strategic goals. Mostly housing counseling within HUD is reported through what we call the HUD Goal 1, strengthen the nation's housing market to bolster the economy and protect consumers. So that's obviously an important goal post-recession. It encompasses ownership and rental, and it shows the value of housing counseling to a strong economy. You know, obviously we help contribute to that goal by helping consumers overcome financial barriers, getting access to responsible mortgage credit or other consumer credit, or helping them just understand their budget. The role of counseling in this goal is also to help strengthen the FHA program, which is a key strategy under Goal 1. Our job is to expand access to housing counseling and ensure that HUD's housing counseling program reaches as many households as possible. We measure our progress by tracking the total number of clients served at HUD through the 9902 data collected in the housing counseling system. I know that's everyone's favorite form, and I'm going to talk about it a little more in a minute. We also report on the percentage of clients that have great outcomes. Have they gained access to housing resources like down payment assistance and rental assistance as a result of counseling? Those numbers are reported to the Secretary as he monitors how we are doing on Goal 1. And we improve FHA by monitoring the number of FHA-insured mortgages where the borrower received pre-purchase or post-purchase counseling, which we know is going to improve the outcome of the loan. So the focus for us is very much around linking our work and your work to the work of the administration in the country and HUD. And I just wanted you to hear how we see it, and I'm interested in your feedback on that. Just a little update on the state of the HUD-approved housing counseling industry. Our national network is approximately 2,200 housing counseling agencies. We are still losing agencies and programs, and the primary reason agencies withdraw from our program is because they do not have sufficient funding to run it. I would say that we've seen a 10 to 15% reduction in the number of HUD-approved agencies over the last 3 years. That number is a little soft because it does include mergers and it includes mistakes in HCS. So we haven't been able to sort all that out, but there's still definitely more people leaving or agencies leaving the program than coming in. In fiscal 2014, the HUD-approved housing counseling network counseled over 1.3 million clients. So far in the first quarter of fiscal 15, our housing counseling agencies have counseled nearly 680,000 clients through the second quarter of 2015. And that rate is 11% higher than the same time last year, which is fabulous. We expect those numbers to increase further now that we're finally cutting you checks. And that's an old-fashioned expression, now that you're finally about to be authorized to go into ELOCs for those of you receiving grants from us. So we expect to exceed our numbers from last year. You know, as you know, and I alluded to it earlier, we've begun collecting new outcomes measures for the first time, and we now have those reports on our website. I can give the links to Matthew if you want to circulate them or find them. I can't emphasize enough how important it is for us to capture the results of your counseling. So if you did a budget for a client, which we require you to do, please report it on your 9902 as an outcome. if you connected your client to subsidized housing or to down payment assistance or to a loan modification, please report it on the 9902. We use that, and I use that, to tell Congress and other stakeholders the story of why counseling is transformative. And your reporting on the 9902 allows us to show the transformation in tangible terms. Now, I understand that Leah Coldham has some comments on that, and I'm going to come back to her in just a minute. But let me share some observation and tips with you on 9902. We are going to have a training on this, and we know there are barriers to successful reporting on the 9902, and we want to work with you to overcome those. But having said that, just a couple things we've observed I want to share quickly. One is a simple thing. The agencies sometimes don't provide cumulative totals in their quarterly reporting. This has a huge impact on the accuracy of our numbers that we report to Congress. So your fourth quarter report should represent your total of all that year's hard work. And we estimate, and this is upsetting to me, that about 15% of our agencies don't report clients served on the 9902 at all. If those non-reporting agencies just reported, that information to Congress and others would really go up by quite a bit, and I think we're understating our impact. So it's also a requirement as part of your HUD approval, whether or not you get a grant. So if you're having trouble reporting, please contact your HUD point of contact so we can fix that. Another area is that all the fields don't get filled out in the CMS system you're using, and when that happens, then the CMS gives us incomplete information. Training on the CMS system that you use makes a huge difference. I don't know the last time you were trained or you trained your staff, but we really see a difference in the completeness of the reporting and the comfort level of the counselor when the training is done. I will say that some of the large CMS providers don't provide as much training as the counselors would like, and we have gotten involved in advocating with some of the CMS providers that they provide more training for you. Speaking of training, new agency staff, when you have turnover, are not always trained on completing the 9902. And I heard yesterday about someone who worked really hard with the agency to get the reporting in, and then the person left, and the next report was late and didn't come in. And so just wanted to let you know that on our website, there are actually a lot of detailed instructions on how to complete the 9902. There's a PDF version of 9902 when you search it on HUD.gov, and you'll see that every single field has a really decent instruction. I actually used that myself when I was trying to learn how to do this. So we also have frequently asked questions and other tools that should come up in the same search. So I know there's a lot to fix. I know multiple reporting is horrible. I know that our systems are clunky, and we look forward to a day when all that gets better. But in the meantime, I just wanted to spend some time here because it really is very important. I do get asked by GSEs, Fannie and Freddie, by Congress. They want to know our analysis and trends based on the 9902 numbers in addition to the reporting we do. And so although it's a pain in the neck for you, I just want to emphasize it really does tell a story. Little example, and then I'll turn it over to Leah if she's available. A lot of folks in meetings, high-level people in real estate, tell me they think the foreclosure crisis is over. You saw an indication of that when Matthew said that Senate had zeroed out, the Senate appropriations zeroed out the NFMC funding. Well, I respond that I don't see that it's over because I see that more than 500,000 people last year went to housing counseling agencies for foreclosure prevention. The numbers are not going down very fast from the HUD counseling standpoint. And so I'm able to tell a different story thanks to your work in letting, and then you're letting us know. But let me turn it back to Bruce or Matthew to see if Leah wants to chime in.
Great. obviously it's an important issue for us, and Leah volunteered to give us a little analysis of what they're doing in the HPN network. Leah, are you there?
Yeah, I am. Can you hear me?
Perfectly.
Yep. Great. All right. Well, thank you so much, Sarah, for that really helpful background and information, and Bruce and Matthew for having me on the call. So I'm Leah Coldham. I'm the Director of Housing Counseling Programs at the Housing Partnership Network, and I'm also the co-chair of the Coalition for HUD Housing Counseling Intermediaries as well. So our network has really been spending a lot of time thinking through this as well. I think everybody probably has. And we've also been talking with Bruce and Matthew as part of the coalition as well to try to sort of think through how we might kind of increase our numbers. So at the HPN level, we've had 2 peer exchanges with our affiliates to try to think through sort of what's happening and how we might get sort of the numbers up. Through this peer exchange, our network has kind of thought about what the average might be for a client, and sort of 3 outcomes per client right now seem like an average, although anywhere it could be well above 3, depending on how deeply you're working with that client. So when we've been looking at this, and by the way, I think, and Sarah, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think right now the HUD average is a little above 1-to-1 per client, and I think that's been kind of consistent across the agencies I've talked to as well. So we want to move to being more like 1-to-3. So
when you say that, I'm sorry, Leah, just to clarify, you mean there's 1 outcome for every client reported
in the individual?
That's what you mean,
yeah.
Category. I actually think it's quite a bit less than that.
Okay. Okay. So I think what we'd like to, at least from where we've been thinking about this, we see, about maybe 3 outcomes per every 1 individual counseling session. And so, we want to get that ratio up. And as Sarah said, there's the story to be told across the industry, and we, that's kind of the at least the way we've been thinking about it. That's one goal to kind of shoot for. And as we've talked it through this, we've really been focusing on the behavior change of counselors, because as everybody knows, in the past, as you were working with a client, at the end you would close out the client, and then an outcome would automatically appear on the 9902. And now the change here is that it doesn't happen automatically at the end, but rather folks have to go into their client management systems and often in their client logs and log the outcomes more incrementally throughout the counseling period with the client. And so that it is a pretty big behavior change. And so how to help counselors who are obviously are very busy and working with their clients to kind of make that change. So in the conversations that we've had, at least through our network, we've come up with a few strategies, and that's kind of what I wanted to focus on to share with the group, and also love to hear how other folks are approaching this. But the first, which Sarah mentioned, is training. So having a HUD training will be, I think, really, really helpful. The way that we've been training counselors was at the intermediary level, but also program managers with counselors at the agency level, is kind of going through different, one of the things that we found is helpful is kind of going through specific scenarios. So using actual client logs and talking through with the group what outcomes would be expected to appear on the 9902 based on the client log. And we've seen that that's been really helpful for counselors to really dig in at that level and get that kind of example. I know, as we've talked about it, it's been helpful, I think, for all of us. So that's one strategy, training of counselors, but that particular type of training. A second strategy has been creating a rubric of outcomes based on an agency's program. So oftentimes agencies have programs that have certain milestones with clients, and there'll be 902 outcomes associated with those milestones. And so a program manager, creates a rubric for their counselors to use, when they're doing their client log, data entry to kind of ping them to say, oh, I've just, I've created a budget, need to go in and mark that as a 9902 outcome, for example. A third strategy, which is a little more intensive, but having program managers, review client logs at the end of a reporting quarter and make sure that all of the 9902 outcomes that should be reported have been for that client, and also sort of reviewing it with the team as well as part of that reporting process. So, I mean, the fourth is really just working with other agencies and intermediaries and as a community, which is, I guess, what we're here on this call to do, to talk through different strategies that other folks are using and just kind of learn from each other. I think that's essential. Obviously, trainings from HUD, I think, Sarah, will be very valuable to the industry. And again, that advocacy with CMS systems and talking through as we learn more, this is a learning process, but figuring out where there might be changes to the systems that could help facilitate that sort of behavior change as well. So that's what I I hope, Bruce, that's what you wanted me to share, and I'm happy to add anything else. But that was that's kind of it.
Good, very helpful. Thank you so much. I think we will all need to pay a lot more attention to this issue. So Sarah, back to you.
Good, and thank you, Leah. That was really great. I was writing down those tips. That's wonderful. I'm going to skim through a couple of, well, more than a couple of updates and make sure that we leave lots of time for your questions and discussion. But let me cover a wide range of things we're working on, and we're doing a lot, and I think I hope it's all very responsive to your needs. That's and your clients' needs. That's our focus. First, on funding, if you are a grantee, you should have received a grant agreement. If you missed the training on filling out your grant agreement and package, then I would encourage you to pull down the archived training on our website. It was very detailed. We're doing a few things differently, and there are a few different requirements. We were very pleased to get it out so quickly, and we will also look for your feedback on both the two-year NOFA and for those of you that went through the supplemental NOFA, because we are planning early for the NOFA next year. There may not be a federal budget, but we will still try to get the NOFA process earlier and faster so that if there is money, you can get it as soon as possible. It'll be especially important next year. Matthew didn't mention this, but not only is NFMC shrinking, but in a lot of your states, hardest hit funds are gone, settlement funds are going, and so we're very concerned about making sure that whatever money's out there you can get to use in your programs. Housing counselor certification, I'll leave it to questions if you're not up to speed. We unveiled our website for certification on June 4th, www.hudhousingcounselors.com. I believe we've had close to 3,500 individual hits on that, individuals hitting that, which is very exciting, and we look forward to your feedback. The training's not required. We encourage you to take it, and it'll assist you in passing the exam. The exam, of course, won't be out until, nor will a practice exam until the final rule is published. We are committed to a smooth implementation with sufficient time to prepare for certification, and we're currently estimating publication of the final rule in October, but really, this is only an estimate. You cannot believe what goes into putting a final rule out, and so we want to get it out quickly, but we also need to make sure that our internal reviews, our technology, and privacy needs are all addressed, as well as other factors. We issued a call for membership on our Federal Advisory Committee. I actually got trained on federal advisory committees and learned that more than 40,000 people serve on different federal advisory committees. This will be the first full advisory committee at HUD. We're very excited about that, and we were very excited that we received just over 200 applications. we're reviewing the applications now, and we'll eventually select 12 individuals who will represent the mortgage and real estate industry, consumers, and HUD-certified counseling agencies. We expect to complete this process later in the summer, and as you know, the committee won't be the only source of advice for us, but I'm looking forward to having them delve into some of the challenging issues we all face. I wanted to talk a minute about outreach and visibility. You know as well as anyone, we need to get the word out about housing counseling. We don't want it to be the best kept secret, and I don't want to meet another homeowner who had no idea these services existed. Last fall, we created a little web banner ad campaign called Housing Counseling Works, which was displayed on certain websites and search engines like Realtor.com and Google. This campaign confirmed close to 50 million impressions and got 30,000 click-throughs in the 3 months that it ran. We've updated that campaign, rethought who it should run on, and we're planning to relaunch later this summer. It'll be a new banner ad campaign in English and Spanish, and there will be versions promoting housing counseling for homeownership and for rental counseling. The ad will be displayed on websites that include Google, Yahoo, Realtor.com, and Zillow. And there will be electronic flyers and materials, including YouTube links, that can be made available to you so that you can partner with HUD to promote housing counseling. You won't be able to co-brand the individual materials, unfortunately, because we're using the HUD seal, but you can post them on your website and cross-link. And our hope is that this visibility and the messaging will help us reach more people so they understand the benefits of housing counseling at key decision points. We look forward to your feedback. I'd love to know if anyone has actually had somebody referred by the web campaign or seen it. We really want to get the user experience. Wanted to spend a little time on oversight. Our goal is that we work together with you to make sure that the counseling services that go out are quality and that grantees are good stewards of the federal dollars. The federal dollars part is complicated, and as part of our risk management process, we use an accounting firm now, Booth Consulting, to assist us in reviewing grant-funded agencies to ensure financial compliance. There are a lot of rules. It can be hard to comply with them. Booth has been going out and really helping agencies make sure they have the right supporting documentation, correct activity reporting, and identifying areas where stronger policies might result in good compliance. We will be using Booth to do more financial audit reviews. If you haven't had one, either as a local or as an intermediary, you probably will get one at some point over the next year or two. Booth has also provided quite a few trainings and can provide technical assistance, and so we really recommend that you take advantage of the resource with us. It's complicated stuff, and the feedback I've gotten on them has been very positive. I also want to put a plug in for our training partners who do really terrific classes in compliance with HUD counseling program requirements, and that's NeighborWorks, National Council of La Raza, and the National Community Reinvestment Coalition. And there are other entities also that do really fine training. So don't stint on your compliance and oversight training, especially I know it may involve people who aren't day-to-day obsessed with counseling the way you all are, but it really will pay off. We continue to use our new 9910 form for performance reviews along with the self-certification part of it. I expect we will get to between 300 and 400 reviews this year, maybe a little more. I hope that you're finding them positive and helpful. We are still working on consistency. There are hard issues that come up in the findings, and your input to make sure that you're clear and we're clear about what we expect. We have room for improvement, but we're really investing in that. I wanted to just share with you very briefly some common findings if you're curious. You know, we all do the performance reviews, including me, and I have to say up front that I've been thrilled about the level of not just the level of compliance, but the real high quality of work that the HUD Counseling Network does. I do not spend a minute of time worrying about standing behind the value of the network as a whole. And where we do have findings and issues, they tend to be tweaks or they tend to be solvable. Occasionally, I have found concerns about the quality of the counseling itself, as have others. And in nearly every case, the leadership of the organization shares our concern and commits to make the changes. There are some areas that are really important and easy to overlook, and I thought I'd highlight two for you today. One is a really common deficiency on the client and group files and documentation in the files, whether it's an action plan or an intake or other aspects of what we list as being in the files. And it can be caused by a lot of things. You know, the client management system isn't so great, or there's just not enough training or enough time. But our view, and a lot of you have said this mantra, it may be great work and great counseling, but if it's not in the file, it didn't happen. We're not just focused on files because we like paper here in the federal government, although that's definitely true. The reason I like to see a good file is because it lets the counselor and the client see the transformation. I think counselors are in the transformation business, and those changes over time get documented in the record. It's a record that really shows why the counseling matters. It should not just be a place where you dump the income, you know, the IRS returns and income verification. The records are also very important when there's a change in staffing. Reported who are not necessarily counseled. And on the other hand, you're not reporting people who are getting counseled. So if you're providing, you know, individual budgeting assistance, you're really sitting down with somebody and going through the steps, those are counseled, and whether or not they bought a home, they should be reported. You should report foreclosure prevention clients, whether or not they were funded with a HUD grant. On the other hand, you shouldn't be reporting people who you screened for eligibility briefly for a loan or an apartment, but you didn't really assess their income, you didn't assess their whole housing needs. You don't need to report to us case management for neighbors who are arguing in a building that you manage. We're working to provide more guidance in this area, but the short advice is to just make sure you're reporting your program activities on people that you really educated and counseled, and make sure you report all of them. I'm going to be really brief on the rest of it, so if you have questions, I'd be happy to go into more detail. This group did ask us to create a complaint process. You were concerned that if you had a complaint about your HUD point of contact, you have a way to resolve that without any negative impacts on your relationship. And at the same time, honestly, we had some HUD staff who said they were a little frustrated when their agencies might be unresponsive or in a disagreement. And so our internal policy committee approved the creation of a central point of contact for complaints and compliments. Her name is Phyllis Ford. And again, I'll have Matthew share her contact information. Our process is committed to confidentiality, investigation, and a fair resolution, hopefully through supportive assistance where appropriate. I'm really pleased to say the complaints we have received about HUD staff have been very constructive, been resolved to all parties' satisfaction, and there have only been a few of them. And I am opening the door if you have more. I think we find it very helpful, and I don't want you to be scared. have also used a similar process to handle complaints about agencies. Phyllis also tracks these. Again, we receive very few complaints. When we do, we investigate them, listen to all sides, and try to propose a fair solution. The most common complaint about agencies, by the way, is that the consumer can't get assistance fast enough, generally caused by insufficient funding or staff turnover. Occasionally, there are complaints about poor customer service on both sides, which we think we can address through training. I'm going to, let me just check here. There's a lot more I could talk about, but I think at this point I would rather answer your questions and hear what's on your mind. And hopefully we'll make sure that we're more customized to what your needs are. So I'll turn it back to Bruce to moderate that part.
Okay, so I'm going to cue Matthew to look at the questions that are in the queue right now. Let me just start out with one that we got sent in earlier, but then we'll jump to the list that's been building on the question box. So Patricia Ross, who's in Tupelo, Mississippi, with Covenant Community Development Corporation, sent in a question, and I'm consolidating it a little bit, but where do you think the work of OHC, and particularly the counseling certification, will take us, meaning the counseling community, in 5 years from now?
I love this question, and you know, I think it'd be really fun to have a collective visioning session of where we all think the agency's in 5 years from now. Personally, I think certification of HUD-approved counseling agencies is going to be a tremendous help to a recognized profession, that it will be a industry, and it's an important step to take us to policy goals like a more routine part of the mortgage process, or even a more routine part of the rental process. I don't think we'll get there entirely in 5 years, but I think that's a really important piece of it. One of the nice outcomes of counselor certification is you'll be able to issue, as we're thinking about, the way we're thinking about it is you'll be able to issue a certificate proving you counseled. And those certificates should have value, as they do now with down payment assistance and others. But I think as we go to one certified industry at the individual level, and hopefully as HUD approval gets more common to be the face of all housing counseling, then private sector players will also develop product that recognizes consumers who made the commitment to counseling through a certificate with a HUD-approved housing counselor. So I think it's a major step forward. But I'm interested in what others think as well.
So Matthew, what have we got in the queue?
I'll just see what you all want to do. There's a lot of pretty specific questions and comments, especially around 9902. I'm wondering if a better use of time may be to focus on the bigger picture things, and maybe we could follow up in writing with some of the more specific things.
I would really like to answer every question. So for the ones that you don't get to, we will answer them.
Okay. And maybe one thing we could think about is maybe a second session in a month or so, where we have a chance to get to some of these. I think people hearing as a group is also very good as well. So, but let's. So, anyways, so let's.
We'll start big picture.
Agencies have different ways of doing that. So some are big enough, let's start there, to be able to afford a form of quality control or supervision that contributes to the compliance side without taking away from the counseling side. Some have intake specialists to help with some of the administrative burden. But for any program, whether you're big or small, you have to decide how much resources go in one place or another. I don't have a good rule of thumb there, and maybe some others do, but I don't. I think that in general, and this is definitely where I sit, I think that we tend to, it's easy to underinvest in a couple of aspects of compliance. I generally find, this is not HUD talking, this is Sarah talking, I find the quality of supervision of counseling to be not nearly as good as it could be. I think that a supervisor who isn't pulling a random file occasionally, or who isn't sitting down with the counselors to troubleshoot hard cases, is really missing the opportunity to add value and scale, efficiency to the daily work of counseling. So I do want to make the point that those two activities are very much related, and more compliance can generally lead to better and more counseling. And the more you think of them as discrete and annoying in the case of the compliance, I think the less likely you're going to do it as efficiently or effectively as you could. So that was a very mushy answer, and it's a hard question. At the very least, if to invest in, I know you have a lot of classes to take. I would invest in a class on the compliance, or if you're a supervisor of a program, take the class on supervising a housing counseling program. It will give you checklists and tools that may save you a whole lot of time in the long run and improve the quality of your program.
Great, thank you. So I think a lot of these we can run through really quickly. Could you just repeat the email address for people to send feedback to you?
Yes, we have, our email address is housing.counseling@hud.gov, and we answer every question. If we don't answer it satisfactorily, you can let us know, but I think we do our best. It also helps a little if you put the topic in the subject line, so we make sure it gets referred to the right specialist here. By the way, our website, if you don't know, is hud.gov/housing counseling. And at that website, you'll find a menu item on the right for counseling professionals that leads you to our training archives, our performance reports, lots of tools, toolkits on how to, in fact, examples of compliance. Our most recent one was giving you a model work plan to look from. If you want to get our newsletter, The Bridge, or sign up for our listserv, you can do that on the website as well.
Great. Going back, when you had given some client numbers, I think in particular you had said 1.3 million clients were seen in last fiscal year. Someone asked if that includes all clients or only HUD clients?
That includes all clients. And when I talk to Congress or stakeholders, I use the total number for a few reasons. The HUD grant tends to be less than 25% of the total agency budget, and for some of you it's 3 or 2% of the total budget. But I feel that our value, even for those that don't get a grant at all, is really around the standards that you're counseling to. And so to me, the investment that Congress makes, for example, in the program, and because it's general it's very general support, the return on that investment ultimately is the total number of people counseled. So we give a lot more weight to that number. The purpose of the HUD counseled number is really a compliance number with the grant. We're reimbursing you for expenses, and we want to make sure that those expenses have gone in a reasonable relationship to help clients. If an agency is claiming a six-figure grant and they're only demonstrating that they've helped 30 clients with that grant, that sends off a little red flag in our mind.
Great. I guess the next two are just a couple bits of feedback on, they're both related to HCO. One person said that HCO does not support Section 10 of the 9902 because HUD does not require it. There's no mechanism to pull the information out of HCO. Can you comment on how those numbers are to be obtained?
Well, we're aware of issues with HCO. We have raised them to Fannie Mae. We have also raised them to Fannie Mae's regulator. I would suggest that if you are a user of HCO, it might be helpful for your voice to be heard on what your issues and concerns are with it. And I know that that can be difficult, but I would really encourage you to make sure that your CMS is serving your needs. There is a longer-term issue that HCO is, supported by a GSE in receivership, where they are looking at every penny that they're spending and whether it relates to their mission. And they clearly have not been able to invest much in it because of the circumstances. And I think as an agency, if you're using HCO, you need to look at what alternatives there may be. I have to say you get what you pay for sometimes. And while HCO is free, it has clearly been
And
I'll just
we have
mention
a very
quickly
active HCO task force that if there are people on the call who aren't involved with it, they should definitely do that. We're working with Fannie and with FHFA on some of these issues.
So also HCO related and a comment, but this person says, unless I do not understand how HCO works, it only allows one outcome per appointment entered. I don't know if anyone else agrees with that, or if that's the case, or if it's a misunderstanding.
We're not HCO specialists here at HUD,
Right.
actually, because we're not the direct users. So, but I would be very interested in the work of the task force, and anything we can do to help from our role, we'd be happy to.
All right, so we should maybe put a pin in that and look into that. Could you just quickly repeat the name of the auditing company?
It's Booth Consulting, B-O-O-T-H. And they've conducted several webinars on the Omni Super Circular and on reading financial audits. They do a very nice job, and if there's scheduling or one coming down the pike, you'll get an email from your point of contact or from HUD letting you know that's coming. If you have special needs or questions that you have where technical assistance might be helpful, you can also make that request to your point of contact, and we can see if we can fit that into the schedule.
Great. Another question on 9902. What do we do with the 9902 submission alerts for people who drop out before we can get a result or never provide any documents?
So they don't have an outcome because you didn't get far enough in the counseling, or is that what you think the question is?
Yes, I think that's right. And
so,
they didn't provide any documentation or anything?
Yeah, I think the situation is individualized, and that may be a good one for peers to comment on for each other. We don't have a particular standard about how far along somebody has been. If there's really no outcome or it's totally unknown, you shouldn't make it up. You should have a reasonable belief in the outcome. But if you had a counseling session, you discussed, you went through the elements of a budget, you might have given some homework around it, but they produced a budget that they took, they were going to work on, then we would look at that as completing a budget, for example. These are judgment calls to some extent, but your individual situations will be helpful to us at this early stage because we can use those as learning tools, and also if it raises a policy issue where we need to clarify our definitions, we can do that.
Great. And I'll just mention quickly to folks, I'm sure we're not going to get to all the questions, but we will make sure that we follow up with any questions we don't get to in writing. So apologies if we don't get to you, but we will after. Another kind of big picture question, will HUD consider making housing counseling mandatory for all first-time home buyers?
We looked at the question of mandatory versus incentivized when we were thinking about the HAWK program, Homeowners Armed with Knowledge, that Congress didn't let us go ahead with. We felt at that time that while there's good data supporting the value of counseling, that an incentive program worked much better with counseling. It positioned it as a positive. It gave a reward to the consumer for making the commitment to counseling, and it wasn't like yet another barrier to close that was just another thing on the checklist that had to get done. So we thought there was a much greater chance that the consumer would actually absorb the information. And you could also position it, well, I guess you could position it mandatory in terms of the timing either way. This was hotly debated, and I think that there are really good arguments on either side. But I would say right now we do not have internal proposals to make it mandatory. The other thing I would add with that is that the market right now is very, very bad for, I don't need to tell you, for first-time home buyers who are, I would say, lower income, people of color, other groups that aren't traditional home purchasers. And the incentives, I think, are an important way to bring people into a market who are nervous about it, who have been hurt before, etc. So it's an interesting topic. I do not represent an official position on that, and if we are to look at other policies, I'm sure we would look at both mandatory and incentivized policies.
Great. And maybe time for just one last question. So this is about the certification, and the person says, some of us have spent years in training and getting certifications from NeighborWorks. With the new HUD certification, she's basically asking what happens now that with all these certifications that folks have earned.
That's a great question. We think it's really, we view the HUD certification as a real basic 101. It's a very broad look at all kinds of housing. It says that you work for a HUD-approved agency, you've passed a test. It doesn't say you're an expert or a great counselor. We look at national industry standards, NCHEC certification, some of the certifications from other networks and providers. A lot of states have certifications. We look at those as the master's degrees. You're beyond the basics, and you're a foreclosure prevention counselor, or you're a state of Massachusetts pre-purchase counselor, whatever the additional requirements are. Many of those have ongoing continuing ed requirements, which ours, as the preliminary rule set, does not. So I hope they work together. It's a lot for any counselor to go through, but as you know, you're in a very complex business, and so all the different kinds of training, I hope, cumulatively add to your quality. And frankly, it's similar to the question about compliance. How much you spend on training versus counseling is an ongoing juggle. Hopefully, if you're motivated or need to get the advanced degrees, those will be very beneficial for you. But we look at them as complementary. We hope that for those programs that are testing on the information we test, that they won't duplicate it. So once our test is out and the standards are clear, we hope that that may reduce the amount of learning for some of the other certificates. But we can't control that.
Great. I see that it is just past 3. Do we have time for any more questions, or should we wrap up?
What I'd like to do is take the questions that have come in. We can prepare some written answers for you, and then if you'd be good to circulate them with your whole network or the folks on the call, so that you know, people would get to see what the questions were, not just their own question. We would be very happy to do that. If they're hard questions, we may punt, but I hope we'll be able to answer them.
That sounds good. So maybe we'll work together, and maybe next week or the following week, whenever, depending on how long it takes, folks can expect a follow-up email.
That would be fine.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Sarah, and thank you for everybody for participating. It's been a helpful and insightful call, and we look forward to continuing these conversations in the future. We do appreciate all the work that OHC is doing and has helped the work of all the groups in the field. Again, a quick reminder, in 2 weeks we'll be doing the next leaders call specifically on student loans and housing counseling. It should be a good deep introduction for managers, and we'll kind of launch a bigger program for us coming up. And we'll be, and so that'll be back at the regular time, so 1 o'clock Eastern, 10 a.m. Pacific time.